morning.
Morning.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Purple. I appreciate you. A little bit of housekeeping to start out. We're going to call to order the Higher Ed Committee Formula Funding and Program Access and Delivery Ad Hoc Committee. Members at the table, the microphone's cut on and off by the button at the bottom. There's going to be a slight delay, so when you're ready to talk, just go ahead and hit that and get your microphone hot. But we're going to start. I'm going to call on Chairman Perkle for a little word for us this morning.
Okay, bow your hearts with me, if you will. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for the blessing that it is to wake up this morning, and I thank you for the state that we call home. Thank you for giving us safe passage here. Lord, I pray that you'll give us wisdom as we debate these issues for the state. Lord, as we are beginning a harvest season for our farmers, I pray for a safe harvest season as those are gathering in food for us. Go before us and guide us and direct us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, well, first I want to welcome you to the Classic City, home of the two-time reigning national champions. I know Chrissy's very happy about that. Kentucky grad over there, it pains her a little bit to see all this success on our campus, but we appreciate you joining us anyway. Let's go through, just for the purposes of everybody in the room, if you guys will, let's go around the table and introduce ourselves briefly, and we'll start with Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Fleming, House District 114, representing Newton, Morgan, and Jasper counties.
My name is Chuck Martin. I represent House District 49 in North Fulton County, represent portions of Alpharetta, Rawlsville, and the city of Melton.
So I'm Clay Perkle, represent a large district in South Georgia.
Molly Aziz with the Budget and Research Office.
Molly's terribly embarrassed right now because she does not like the microphone, but that's all right. And I am Marcus Wiedauer. I represent this great district. So I live right down the street in Watkinsville, represent the majority portion of Oconee County as well as a portion of Clark.
Happy to be here this morning. I'm Carter Barrett, and I represent House District 24 on the north side of Atlanta, all encompassed in Forsyth County, just north of Chairman Martin.
Awesome. We have one join us down. If we can hit your microphone, hit that button at the bottom. Dale?
I'm Dale Washburn, House District 144, representing Bibb, Monroe, and Jones counties.
And Miss Christie, I'm not going to let you get away with not saying something, so go ahead.
Good morning. I am Christy Farhudi, Deputy Legislative Counsel.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. So we'll just start with a little recap from our initial meeting. Again, as I said that day, I think it was important for us to kind of just go back to the beginning and understand exactly, how these formulas are even put together and how they function. So we had an opportunity to hear from USG and TCSG. Gains a deeper understanding of the funding formulas and the program access and delivery and the efforts that they're making and the constraints that they're currently working under. Plan for today's meeting and future meetings. Today we're just going to open discussion amongst us from what we heard. Last time I said I had asked for commentary or questions to be really directed just at how the formula works, not getting into the necessary opinion on those formulas yet. So we're going to go dive into that a little bit further as people have ideas, comments, and suggestions. We have representatives from TCSG here today and respond to any questions that might come up. Unfortunately, USG was unable to join. There's a scheduling issue. They're very busy, especially this time of year, but they will be happy to respond to anything that we ask, and they will be hopefully at our next meeting in Statesboro. Again, leading into that, our next meeting will focus on kind of final thoughts, recommendations that we might come up with which will be October 22nd. In Statesboro, the university down there. All right, today's agenda. So we're going to go into the formula funding program and access to delivery. So I'm going to open it up for questions, discussions from the committee. If anybody has some opening thoughts on what we heard, anything surprising that you learned when we started talking about how the funding comes together for both USG and TCSG. I'll open up the floor now. I know Chuck's. Come on.
A couple of things that, as you recall, I had to step out of that meeting and didn't hear a lot of the details, but one of the things I would like for the committee to look at and perhaps get feedback from TCSG today and the university later is over the funding formula is old. They said that before. There's areas where we fund based on an FTE, but different universities have a cost to deliver that. For instance, I would like to say would like to use is utilities. I mean, utilities are what they are. If it's hotter in the summer, it costs more to cool. We're in the University of Georgia. It costs more to cool this building than in the summer when it's not so hot. So my question is, would it make sense to agree that we pay the utility bills for our technical colleges and our university system, regardless of what they are, and not put them in a situation where they have a formula funding, and if it's 10% hotter, so they spend 10% on utilities, whatever percent of that budget is, they have to find it from someplace else. To basically remove that, what we know is a cost. It's not a finite cost, but it is a discernible, objective cost. I mean, there comes a bill from your utility provider, and we would budget money. Of course, we're constitutionally separated from the regents. I mean, from the university system, but we would budget money for that. And if it were a cool summer, that money would fall back to, or if it was a good weather year, that money would fall back to the general fund. If it was, more, we would have to adjust that at mid-year. But we would take the fudge factor, if you will, away from things that are discernible, no debate on. Now, certainly that's just an idea that I have and would like the committee to look at, because the commissioner and the chancellor may have reasons why that wouldn't work. But I just know in the past that when they have to balance those things against an instructional budget, or when it goes under, they have more money. It just seems like in 2023, we have discernible bills that get, can be billed and paid electronically, that we could budget that, bifurcate those funding items, and perhaps give more predictability to the instruction side of the business. And if the chair would like, I mean, I don't know, putting Commissioner Dozier on the spot, but I don't know if he would tell me I'm all wet on trying to do that, or if there's a shot at that being an idea.
Well, we will definitely have the commissioner up in a few moments, give him an opportunity to address the committee, and let's maybe get some more opening thoughts, and then put that on your list, Commissioner, on maybe some response to that as you come forward and here in a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's a great idea to start. So some pushback, perhaps. There again, I think most of the time there is a fairly stable component to our utility bills for the TSG and USG systems. July and August, it's hot, and it's we can compare that to last year, this year, and I think that is something that we should be responsible for. The only caveat, I got a neighbor that he had someone that lived on his farm, and he provided the house for them to live on the farm and the utilities, and you walked in his house in the summer and you could hang meat because the But another thing that the chairman had mentioned in the last meeting, I thought is worth um, really serious consideration is the way our TSG bills for courses of study. Some of them are pretty expensive to deliver. Some are less expensive to deliver, but it's the same charge for the less expensive versus the most expensive. And I think perhaps a breakdown, as the chairman had mentioned in the last meeting, of what it does cost to deliver a RN or a lineman, electrical lineman, electrician. I mean, these are things that just absolutely are imperative for the growth of our state, and our TSG systems do a super job in training those folks. But I would imagine in the background they've got to move things around in order to educate the students across the board through the different courses of study they have.
Yeah, and I'll kind of tagging along with that. I mean, I think one of the takeaways I had was, if we're going to tinker with the formula and make suggestions, I really want to make sure that it's not set up where we're just offering to offer so that the formula is more funded. Meaning, when we start talking about the differences, obviously, between USG and TCSG, the TCSG programs often are the things that we probably need more of. As you start getting into doctors and medicals and stuff like that. But I mean, linemen, CDL drivers, these programs that are very expensive. Whereas I'll use the example of maybe an underwater basket weaving degree. We don't necessarily need to, want to make sure that we're actually offering the things that are needed, not just encouraging superfluous offerings just for the sake of funding a formula.
So much as the bills change from month to month, it's that we fund as part of the FTE this much dollars, and that pays for heating and air and so forth. In new buildings at the University of Georgia, it's funded on a per square foot basis. The new buildings at the University of Georgia, the cost to heat and cool those is much lower. If you have an older building at UPickett University,
Right.
it costs much more than that. So they're at a disadvantage. And all I'm saying is not trying to give people more money or less money. It's just that's a discernible cost that we know what it is. You don't need to roll it into a formula. The other thing, if we try to pay that professor and this professor and that, those are too, they get too micro, to manage. But at the discernible issues, I mean, they have a bus system here on campus, right? We know what diesel fuel goes up and down. I mean, that may be paid out of a fee, a transportation fee. So they may be taking care of that another different way. It may not be out of the formula. So I'm not trying to suggest that we take the cap off, and that's a good point. But just the discernible things we remove.
Fixed costs.
Yeah, the discernible things we move that we move outside the formula and still fund. Because when we come later, I'll just go back and tell you what hit me was when we had Katrina years ago and the price of fuel went way up. We had a situation where the Georgia State Patrol ran out of budget for fuel, and they had to rob Peter to pay Paul a bit until we met in January, and I think there was actually a special session that did. But I mean, it costs money to have the state troopers on the road in the car. It costs what it costs. I mean, they're not spending
right.
more because gas costs more. So that was just, and again, the commissioner may come up, the chancellor may come up and go, hey, that doesn't make any sense. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. And if so, then we've looked at it and talked about it. And then to what the Chairman Wiedauer said, I absolutely agree. I think in our technical college system as well as the university system, when we're driving enrollment, we don't necessarily drive it to the areas where we need the workers. We drive it to the we tell them at the global level we need these workers, but at the funding level we fund whatever you teach. And so it's worth a discussion about how we can help do that. Make sure the money. But again, last year we talked about we have a limited amount of human capital, professors, people that teach in all areas of education are at a premium, and it's important to deploy that human capital in a manner that best serves the student as well as the state treasury. So I think both those ideas are very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky when you have all the high demand fields, right? And you're trying, I mean, they spoke to it a little bit at the last meeting. You're competing with the private sector to have somebody come in and actually teach those same high demand fields. So the cost of delivery there, understandably, is going to go up. And I think that's something, I don't know, I mean, formulas are meant to be formulas, but if there's a way to make it a little more malleable where as those high demand situations change, that there's a way to fund them appropriately moving forward. If there's any other opening remarks, we'll take them.
So as a freshman, I'm newer to this, and all I can apply is my personal family's filter to it. So I'm from Forsyth County, Georgia, and we're very fortunate there. We have excellent school system, K through 12. We have University of North Georgia, which has a campus in Cumming, Georgia, and we have Lanier Technical College, which also has a campus in Forsyth County. So we've got all. Was a dual enrollment student, so she got the benefit of going to both University of North Georgia and Lanier Tech. And what a tremendous benefit to our family was the fact that these young kids are able to get a toe in the water, a foot in to the university system and technical college and get exposed to different career opportunities earlier, but doing it in a very safe environment while they're still home with their parents. So it's instead of just chucking them into the deep end at University of Georgia as a freshman, they're kind of getting exposed earlier in life, and that's a big thing. I haven't quite figured out how we weave it all together between K-12 and our career pathways. We've got 54 career pathways in our high schools in Forsyth, and then we've got the opportunities over in Tech. What I'm not sure about is it still the best kept secret at Tech, that the program offering for both young people and older people, and I know that's not exactly what we're talking about funding for this thing, but are we getting the word out? Jennifer Finney talked about, sometimes we've got an issue with resource counselors or guidance counselors. Do we have enough of them? And it's really a question of, do we have people there on the ground already that we just need to sort of take on that additional role as well, or do we need more people? We talked the last time about issues like around transportation for people who want to avail themselves of it. Are they able to? Can they get to the schools? Are they doing online training, things like that? So as a freshman, I'm still sort of getting the whole picture in my head. Y'all are a lot further down the path than I am as far as funding for them. I don't even know how big the budget is. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're learning quickly. You're fine. Well, we'll have the commissioner, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot. If you don't mind, you can head up to the podium, introduce yourself, and
Good wasn't surprised to be able to present to you guys today, so thank you for that opportunity, Mr. Chairman. And always appreciate the work that the House does when you're looking at TCSG and the higher education. This past session, we all had a great chance to talk about the formula. I think the Chancellor brought it up quite a few times, and honestly, I kind of had that opportunity to talk about TCSG's formula as a result of that, so I appreciate you guys delving into that. It is something that has gotten some age. Our formula is a little bit younger than USG's. We received our formula back in 2000. It was based on, I believe, 1996 numbers. We have just kind of been growing as the budget changed based on that formula for the last 20 plus years. And when you look at it, there are two components, and I'll get to Chairman Martin's suggestion in just a minute, Mr. Chairman, so thank you for that suggestion. Those two components, just to remind you, the largest component, which is based on the class that is taught and the credit hour that is taught, is the personal services. To give you an idea, obviously we have several high-cost programs. One of the highest cost is healthcare. Y'all just brought that up. And based on that formula and how it's created initially, healthcare is not even in that highest cost bucket. It's in the second highest cost bucket. So healthcare is around, last year based on the funding, around 186 if my memory serves me right. And so as you guys delve into this, I appreciate it because we do believe there needs to be some adjustment. I'll come back to that in just a minute with the work that you guys did and the General Assembly did and the Governor did, specifically on the $8 million tied to healthcare, nursing, and aviation tied to the formula. But real quickly, the second part of that Chairman Martin was referring to is the operation side of the budget. The operation side of the budget includes everything outside of the personnel. So it includes that utility bill that Chairman Martin brought up, but it includes paying for the custodians to come in and clean up. It includes the lighting. It includes opening anything that's not hiring a person. That second portion of that formula covers those costs. And so as we've had inflation over the years, obviously the running of a college has gone up. To give you an idea, we received last year, and I'll miss it, I'll stop at $3.70. It's 72 or 74. I apologize, I didn't bring the exact number, but the formula we are funded on is based on the square footage of our colleges, and it's $3.70 something cents a square foot. Just to give you an idea, one of the reasons that's so important to us, and when you talk to my 22 presidents, it really, I don't want to say it's emotional, but it's something they really relate to, is when that formula was first created back in 2000, it was $4 and something a square foot. And so over the years, our formula fluctuates, unlike USG. Whatever the final budget is in the Appropriations Act is redistributed and recalculated, our numbers are. And so over those years, those lean years, which we had to, and the budget was cut, that's how you had the operation side of that budget go down below the $4. And then as y'all have added money back, it's moved us back closer to the $4, so it's much appreciated. But just to give you an idea of the stress on our 22 presidents on really running the operations side of the budget, and they do a phenomenal job, they make it work. But that's why that's so important, whether you're looking at utilities or somewhere else, we really would appreciate some relief when it came to the operations side of the formula, because it impacts the rest of the funding. So as they get money in on other areas, we've got to take care of the campuses. The average cost, depending on how you look at that, is anywhere from $9 to $12 for us to run a campus on the operations side. So any relief, I don't know if the chairman's recommendation is the right answer. I've got to think about that, but I do appreciate you bringing that up. Any relief in that area is much appreciated. Real quickly, the House led and the Senate supported and the governor signed in the budget, and I really appreciate you guys. just to delve into the cost of instruction, the cost of equipment. You brought up the different cost of the high-demand programs. It fluctuates. But for the most part, there is a delta difference, and I couldn't be more proud of our colleges and how they try to make up that delta difference and what it really costs to administer the RN program or administer the lineman program. You guys took a deep delve into that last year in 3 programs: aviation, CDL, and nursing. And the data that we provided you was that delta that our colleges are making up either through people donating services, making money on some of the other programs that we have that are lower cost programs, was about $24 million just for those 3 areas. And I want to thank this body for supporting the first of what I believe was intended of a 3-year phase-in of closing that delta in those 3 programs. And you guys supported $8 million being added to our formula specifically for aviation, CDL, and nursing. And that made a huge difference for us this year. So thank you for that. I hope as we continue to look at the formula, whether it's a whole revamping, there's a host of different ways the formula can be done across this nation, from looking at what's the return on investment of the folks graduating from colleges and what type of delta does that have on the GDP and the dollars in the state, to just what does it cost. And there's a hybrid of looking at that. So as you delve into how do you think this formula should be looked at, we appreciate that because it is an older formula. We do believe we can do more should the formula actually reflect what it costs. So every time we want to expand a CDL program, every time we want to expand a nursing program, we have to make sure we can cover that delta cost difference. So it may mean that we have to expand a lower cost program to create a revenue stream to expand a high cost program.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
That's the problem. If I won't say problem, that's the issue.
Yes, sir.
Because that's what we're forcing them to do. And that's what I feel like we need to get our hands around, because creating a lower cost program to get a revenue stream to pay for the higher cost, we're spending resources on things that may not actually have a need in the real world.
Mr. Martin, Chairman Martin, the only thing, I appreciate that comment, we will not increase a program unless there is a demand by job offerings and all, but we do have to balance that.
If you need
Yes,
to
sir.
do that, you
Yeah.
should do it
Yep.
organically.
Yes.
You should. And
Yes. Yes.
So let me back up. I don't want to get into managing your
Right.
business, but you shouldn't, because you need to do this, you shouldn't be forced to do that. If you need to do them both, they should
Yes,
drive
sir.
them. They should carry their own water, if you will. But
But-
great point. I'll get out of your way, but that's the point I wanted to make. Is that
The-
those things should happen organically and independent of one another.
The last thing, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just share just our latest enrollment numbers just with you, because I do think that's important for you guys to hear as well.
One
Yes, sir.
moment,
Yes, sir.
because I want to touch on some of the comments you made right towards the end, and then it goes kind of into what Chairman Martin was saying as well. I think it's kind of important for us to also remember, right, that the formula is a policy. The formula is not statute. So what we're looking at, is suggestions on a policy. That policy essentially starts in the House, because we do start the budget. But it does take buy-in from the Senate, the governor, of course. So just as you said, we lead on that, and that's obviously the importance of this committee and where we're trying to go with this. So these are tangible opportunities to tweak
Yes.
or overhaul, whatever it is, whatever our suggestions end up being. But kind of back to all of that, we don't. I made it my remarks. I don't want to see us be put in a position of just offering to offer,
Yes.
because we need to cover the costs of things that we really, really need.
That's right.
But yes, you carry on with the enrollment number.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I just like to share some great news. Very, very proud. The pandemic hit us. We had actually, right before the pandemic, TCSG had seen, I believe, for the first time in a while, multiple semester growth since the last economic slowdown, and we peaked. And the pandemic kind of hit a stall on post-secondary education. It hit us as well. We ended up with about a 9% decline in enrollment that first year of the pandemic. However, what we have seen since then is we have seen 4 semesters in a row of enrollment growth, which is incredible for us and for the state. When I say us, we are the workforce pipeline of the future. So when we hear that, we think of the workforce pipeline related to the jobs that you and the governor have brought to this state. But total enrollment is up 8%. Credit hours, meaning we have head count up 8%, but the head count's actually up. The credit hours are actually up 9%, meaning our head count's up, but they're also taking more credit hours when they come to us. A lot of times, and we'll talk about dual enrollment in the next committee, dual enrollment has been a driver of enrollment for TCSG in the past, and it's still something that is a big component of our enrollment, but the traditional student is up 4%. So I think that's important to hear that, yes, while we see dual enrollment coming back as our K-12 systems get up and running, and that's extremely important, we're also seeing our traditional student coming back as well and growing. When you look at inside, what are they taking? While we've been up 8 and 9%, going to the point that you made, Mr. Chairman, on what kind of classes are they taking, inside of that number, the high demand classes are up 13%. So while enrollment has increased, the classes they're taking are those high demand jobs that we need. And so it's very, very refreshing to see, being our goal to make sure we have the workforce of the future. We're seeing that in students coming back, but we're seeing it when they come back, they're enrolling in the high demand areas. So it's exciting to see as we go into this. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of some of the thoughts I had as I walked up here.
I appreciate it. Any questions for the commissioner before we?
Thank you. So one of the things that I jotted down several. When you look at formula funding and you look at some of the higher cost delivery items, as Chairman Martin had mentioned, healthcare. You mentioned $186 per credit hour, thereabouts, and that really has not been updated in a while. Is that because the money has not followed? I mean, how would you set that metric to a real world? Someone asked me the other day, why are you growing, why are you not growing more corn?
Right.
Well, fertilizer is out of this world. And they could say, well, 3 years ago it wasn't. Well, it was 3 years ago. The inputs have changed, and such is with training our workforce. I know it does change. If the formula hasn't been, the metric, the baseline, this is how much it costs for training a nurse. If that's not changed in 13 years, who changes it?
Yeah, so, you bring up a great point, Mr. Chairman. The training that we do inside our technical colleges is, and we say this all the time, I've heard most everybody on this group say it, we're not training like we did 20 years ago. You take nursing, for example, anything in the allied healthcare area, you're using simulation, I call them probably not the proper word, but the dummies or whatever the proper term is for those simulation people are. When you're looking at those, the cost has gone up. The advancement of the training has gone up. We have kept up to some degree with the infusions that the governor and this body has infused in it, but not at the same rate of the true cost of providing the training. So we provided to Molly and them last year the actual cost. I did not bring it with me today, but for nursing specifically, do you remember, Molly, was it about $500 a credit hour? I can't remember exactly. We'll get that back to you. But when you look at it, that's what we're asking to be considered is we receive $186 in the formula. We receive $100 in tuition. So the college is getting $286 plus some fees. but the cost of delivery is double that. And we're actually able to do that through partnerships with our hospitals. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have those partnerships, but the gap is so wide that it does slow down expansion.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I mean, tell me if this statement would be true. I mean, you as commissioner have your presidents out at your colleges. Some of the colleges have multiple campuses, but those presidents, to some extent, are responsible for a P&L for that institution on an annual basis, right? I mean,
Yes.
they are. So we need people in the healthcare field, using his example of nurses. So if we go to Carter Barrett there, and he's the president of the branch of Lanier Tech up there in Forsyth, and we say, we need you to open, 50 slots for nurses, he looks down at his P&L and goes, I'm going to get killed next year, right? I mean, you're basically asking him to open a loss leader, and that, I keep harping on that, but that's at the 30,000 foot level, we're telling them we need nurses, we need people in allied health fields. But when it comes down to the funding, the college presidents, to do what we need, puts them in a place where either Commissioner Dozier or their board or some of us are going to go to them, what do you mean you need more money next year?
Yeah, yeah.
And we just need to realize that and we need to figure out a way, in my opinion, and that's what Chairman Weedar and this group's going to do, figure out a way to do that so that when that tide goes by, you don't fuss about that money coming back out of your budget, right? So if you're not building those careers anymore, and so as discreet as we can get while still keeping up with a reasonable formula, I think is the right thing to go. And your point about the $4 that went down that came back to $3.72 makes my point exactly, that in the lean years they have to squeeze more, out of the grape, if you will, or blood out of the turnip, because the money was cut back during the Great Recession. They still had to pay teachers, they still had the education budget, so you didn't paint the building, or you didn't fix the I mean, that's just the honest truth of it. And we have that, and I'm very much a budget hawk. I want value for that, but we have to realize, I think, if we want these careers, if we want to do that, we can work in conjunction with that. I know it's over in the university system, but Wellstar has done a tremendous partnership over at Kennesaw.
Right.
And they've allowed them to do that. And without that partnership, they probably wouldn't have been able to add those and with the clinicals that go along with it.
And I probably should say more about that. We couldn't do half of what we do without the partnerships by the industry, whether it's in the allied health area, whether it's in welding, whether it's in manufacturing. We are blessed in this state to have industry partners that truly do help make sure that we have the ability to train the future workforce. It's amazing.
I'll just add one thing. I mean, we keep talking about all the high demand stuff, but I mean, I think for us to really make an educated suggestion, it would be very beneficial, and I don't know if it's every degree. I mean, if you have the data, obviously every degree would be hugely beneficial. But, I mean, we need to know how much each of your degrees cost to teach.
We have a pretty good breakdown, Mr. Chairman, of each program, of what the average per credit hour cost is across the system, so we can provide you that.
I mean, I think that would be very, very important for us.
Yes,
as
sir.
we move forward.
Be happy to provide that.
I'm curious about, you talked about CDL, aviation, nursing, of course. I'm curious as to the process, how those bubbled up as the high demand, what the process is. Is that an internal thing at TCSG? Is that a economic development thing that comes from the state? I'm just curious how the process works.
Yeah, great question. We were very blessed that years ago we looked to see where would we, in the HOPE process, what would be the high demand fields that HOPE fully covered the tuition cost. That was done and identified 17 really pretty big categories, whether it's manufacturing, healthcare, others. I guess 2 years ago, the governor and you guys added criminal justice and law enforcement, so now we have 18 of those. the way those three bubbled up is obviously during the pandemic, the healthcare area, the hearings with your hospitals and your docs came up, and it just started churning. So there was not a magic reason for those three specific, other than during the pandemic, healthcare, supply chain management as far as CDL goes, and then aviation had just been something that had really been specific to this body when we've been looking at high demand that we'd spent a lot of time on. And so as we worked, it was real obvious on the first two because of the pandemic of what we had. Supply chain with CDL was hitting everything across this state. Nursing was huge during the pandemic with travel nursing, the hospitals coming in, us all working as a group. The governor set the task force. And then aviation really came out of this House body based on the focus that had been spent zeroing in on that we are the #1 state for aviation, and it's supposed to grow continuously in the state. But we only had 5 programs across the state, and how do we grow that? With the Chat Tech program that you guys are all familiar with, it put another focus on it of do we build this additional facility in Dallas at Paulding and grow that aviation program, and what is the cost for it? So aviation really did morph out of the House work on aviation.
And I'll speak to, expand on even the CDL. You think about all the compounding factors that have created that to be such a need specifically for Georgia. It's across the country, but specifically for Georgia. Starting, back in the early 2000s when we started really focusing on expanding the port and what that meant to our overall economy. You bring in the jobs that we brought in.
Right.
We, mid 2010, 2012, somewhere in there, we had expanded and grown the port to the point where we finally started pulling a lot of business from the West Coast. It became cheaper. My company, ourselves, we used to ship to LA and truck across the United States. And around 2010, that shifted. And where we actually it's cheaper now to come through Savannah and then ship from there.
And
you add in, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
You add in, then you have a pandemic, and everybody's sitting at home ordering on Amazon. And all of a sudden, and then we bring in record economic development over and over and over again. And you got CDL drivers. My goodness. You got companies like Walmart who tell a driver, look, you can make 2 turns today. You never have to get out of your truck. Pull up. We'll take care of absolutely everything else. You sit there and move on. Or you can go get a job being a short haul, and you're running like crazy. Some of the down in your area, I'm sure, timber drivers. So we're losing people to those bigger operations because they're making it more and more comfortable. So with CDL specifically, and I focus on that a lot because it's a driver for our.
That's right.
For our entire state.
And if I could just kind of connect some dots on the funding formula and and other funds that come in, with CDL being such a focus, we're very blessed. First, I talked about industry earlier. Coca-Cola came to the table and donated $1 million of one-time money to help us actually increase some pay for our CDL instructors, and also some of the expansion of the pad. Some of the federal dollars that came down, the governor allocated to us to expand our pads across our system to have additional training slots. And then last year, this body gave us some of the operating costs to really close that gap on really providing the service. And the immediate result of that is it's growing this year as well with that money, but just in a 1-year change, and we don't have all those pads open yet, so we're still building them. We increased by 24% the number of students. It's still not where it needs to be. It went up to right at just under 2,600 graduates last year from 21 the year before, and this year it'll be more than that. So when you look at the return to make sure we are getting that workforce for exactly what you described, Mr. Chairman, the funding from all 3 areas, I shouldn't say operation, the personal services money that you guys provided in the budget last year, combined with the one-time cost that Coke gave, along with the one-time cost we got from the grants through the governor, through the federal budget grants, it's making a difference. And so thank y'all for your support in that area.
Well,
thank you, Commissioner. We'll let you,
Yes, sir.
We'll let you sit back down. I do want to give an opportunity for a few representatives that have been able to join us this morning to introduce yourselves. I don't think that's hot. Just if you'll hit that button at the bottom and pull it to you, that'd be great. Just introduce yourself, where you're from, who you are.
State Representative Jasmine Clark, House District 108 in Lilburn, Georgia. It should have taken me an hour to get here, but it took a little longer, so I apologize for
Well, thank you
my
for,
tardiness.
no worries. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, State Representative Rhonda Bruneau, District 77.
And Lydia Glaze, representative from the House District 67.
Good morning, Representative Imani Barnes from House District 86.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Again, I'll remind everybody that, this is something, and again, I think that what we just asked of the commissioner of understanding how some of these, how much some of these programs cost really are going to be a kind of a key element into what we might suggest as we move forward with funding, specifically with TCSG. We'll ask the same of USG and certain things. Obviously, they're a little bit broader probably in the offering, so that might be a little bit of a higher ask, but we might look at, again, their high demand fields that we need to kind of continue to support. I don't want to keep putting them in a position, or ourselves in the position, of having to prop something up year to year. I'd really like to kind of drill down on it to the point where we can offer up a suggestion or a formula that, like I said earlier, might be malleable enough to last longer or be able to be altered with not as much effort as high demand fields shift in the state. But if anybody has any other closing remarks, I would offer them up now. Again, we will be meeting again, and we'll get. I'm sure the commissioner will commit to getting us some information on those costs soon, so that we can have those emailed out to you guys, so we can actually really start diving into what the costs are as we go into our next meeting. Chairman Martin, do you have?
You got to get some of these so I can learn how to use them a little bit. I like the not having the wires. But the formula funding in delivery, and I don't know, we won't get the commissioner to come back, but if as part of doing this, we see some of the delivery, the way we deliver the education to be affecting actually what the costs are, and how that may be impactful, number one. And number two, that I wanted to share in conversations with a couple of folks since our last meeting. I don't know, maybe just a light came on. Maybe you all have seen this, and I haven't. But it just, in being out in some of our K through 12 educational areas with some of the moms and dads that come to the board members meetings that they have in Fulton County, we have a tremendous amount of talent at home right now, and that's fine. It's a personal decision for moms or dads to stay home, with the family and with the kids for a certain period of time. But I wonder about the delivery of education that we learned about during COVID for people to get additional certificates, additional stackable credentials if it's TCSG, that we could have somebody from the university system and TCSG talk to us about, because the gentleman, as the commissioner mentioned, if you have more people coming in with tuition, it's revenue. If we have those things that are taught online, I feel like we can augment skills that people have while they're staying at home on their own choice with their families for a certain number of years. I mean, we have doctors and lawyers and financial officers and, you know, managers at home with their young families that might avail themselves of some stackable credentials that we have, some cybersecurity augmentation of a degree if you got your technology degree 10 years ago. And it would be interesting to me, as the second part of your ad hoc committee, in addition to the funding formula, of how that delivery could be, to get education into those, to build the workforce and allow them to multitask. Because, I mean, it just seems like being at home, sometimes the kids are away from, while they're away from school, you might take a class. So perhaps if you'd entertain that.
Yeah, and in fact, I think it was asked in the last meeting, it may have been Representative Barrett, but if they had a marketing budget, I think somebody asked that question, and I think there was a kind of a chuckle in the room. I keep using the port. Obviously, you'll find out pretty quickly I'm a big fan. If you haven't been down there to tour the facility, they do a great job of showing you exactly all the great things they've done down there. But I use that as an example all the time. I mean, the crane operators, you know, and the money that you can make, quite frankly, in a program directly out of high school. Those are the types of things when we start talking about access and delivery that you know, I want us to keep in mind too. What are the things that we can do to help them attract people to those programs? We're talking about how much they cost, these high demand fields, but how do we attract more people to enter those fields? I talk often about how, especially, quite frankly, in my district, I think that a lot of the kids feel a lot of pressure that if they're not going to a four-year college, that it's somehow or another they're not successful, and that's just such a farce. I was a GC one-man shop for 20 years, and every one of my subcontractors made more money than me. They had none of the liability, none of the headache, and they all did better than I did, because they focused on one thing and one thing they did well. These are honorable professions that people can go into, that for somehow, you know, we've kind of, I don't know, it's a societal thing, not to get too preachy on it, but you know, that somehow or another, if you're an electrician, you're going to get looked down upon. So I think that we need to consider, you know, is there a way that we can help support that mission of bringing people into these careers, into these jobs that are so vital. So I offer that up for food for thought.
I have a question, and it kind of came up right as the commissioner was about to leave.
Sure.
He brought up how they got like one-time funds from Coca-Cola to pay for the personnel, for the people who are going to actually be teaching some of these high demand fields. And I'm just curious, like, how do they maintain that? Because if it's one time, then the idea is that they're going to have to find that money somewhere else. And that's $1 million. That's a lot of money. So I'm just curious, like, if that's something that we need to also consider when we're talking about this is, yeah, these schools can go out and try to do partnerships with other people, but if those fall through, let's say you have another economic downturn or something, how do we make sure that those programs now don't have that leg to stand on because it's literally not there?
Right, and I think that goes back to, and I'm happy to have the commissioner come back if he wants to expand on that. But I will say that's exactly what we're saying, is that we want to get them out of the position of having to do that. Now, obviously, you know, Coca-Cola's been a great partner for that. Other companies have as well. Yeah, please.
Mark Peavy with the Chief of Staff of the Technical College System, for anybody that doesn't know. We were super appreciative of Coca-Cola stepping up and doing that. We were very fortunate from a timing perspective that this body, the governor's office, with some GEARS funds, happened to come along about the same time that Coca-Cola was really looking to invest with TCSG to expand those programs. And so we were fortunate to be able to, and the commissioner mentioned, combine the use of some GEARS dollars to be able to expand some ranges. Coca-Cola, as most entities do, was very specific about where they'd like to help us expand based on their needs. And so they had 5 locations around the state where they had bottling companies, and we were able to pair up and match some of the GEARS dollars that were helping with construction of a couple of new CDL pads, along with some expansions or revamping of existing pads. So we had dollars to do that, and that gave us the opportunity. In some of those cases, 3 of them were new startup programs in those specific areas. So the Coca-Cola dollars allowed us to pre-fund, so to speak, the personnel and the instructors to be able to teach those programs. And so moving forward, the idea is that, especially when those new programs were there, we got the instructors in place. Now we've got students there. The students and the tuition costs are covering the cost of those instructors. So really, if you think about it from a personnel standpoint, those were startup costs for us that allowed us to get those instructors in place. With CDL programs, it helps, and there's a couple other high costs. Aviation is another one. You have to have instructors if you're starting a new program, usually a year ahead of time, to be able to, in the CDL instance, be able to prepare the pads and make sure all the program is ready to run. And so that gave us a chance to kind of pre-fund that. Now we've got some tremendous enrollment growth in those programs, in those areas, and the enrollment growth is carrying that moving forward. So it's certainly a concern to make sure we've got costs for personnel moving forward as those programs were there. But as long as we've got the enrollment where we need it to be, then it'll cover the cost of those personnel as those programs continue ahead. So if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Sure.
I know. That's why I'm here. So.
Still had to figure this thing out. We have property, plant, and equipment all over the state of Georgia. Remind me, we have a technical college campus within how many miles of any Georgian, right?
I hope it's about 35
yeah,
or 40.
well, no, I was doing that. I wanted you to give that commercial. So,
yes.
So within 30, 35 miles. We don't teach everything everywhere, but
correct.
We're
Yes,
trying to do that job. So I like the idea, and Coca-Cola Company is an awesome organization. You know, Atlanta-based, and born and based. But they invested $1 million. They do a lot of philanthropic things, and that was maybe a little philanthropic, but it was a lot of business sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think they would admit, and I'm thankful.
And they were very open about that.
I'm thankful either way.
Right.
And I just wonder, I would like to see us for program delivery. I'd like to see us do that more. Because
we would love to see
if they fund those programs as they're needing, the drivers, it's kind of a soup to nuts thing that they come in and they know they don't have to go to work for Coca-Cola. It's not like they're tethered to them, in the program, but people see the opportunity to do that, and it seems like that would be available, up in Northwest Georgia with some of the manufacturing, going on, in the, areas up there, and certainly down, with the new battery facility coming on, down in the super site in Savannah. So I mean, I think it's a great. Great straw man to use, and I hope we use that more. I guess.
To be clear, you're absolutely right. Number one, and we're very happy for there to be some amount of philanthropic interest, but without a doubt, we want there to be a direct business need that's being met for any of our partners that are coming along to help support one of our programs. And so, we're super happy that Coca-Cola, and we've been specifically reporting back to them on the direct impact to the number of CDL drivers in those specific areas that they're looking for. So all that being said, we absolutely have those types of things that happen on a local level on a day in, day out basis. I know the commissioner has mentioned to this committee and to your higher ed committee many times how we simply could not operate around the state without our business partners on a local level. And so the Coca-Cola example is one that made a big splash because it was $1 million at the system level, and we were able to do it in a number of different places. But on a local college level, and if one of our college presidents were here, he or she could tell you about the innumerable number of opportunities where their local partners come along, whether it be with a piece of equipment or input into the curriculum or internship, externship opportunities along. So you're absolutely right. We are constantly, when we talk about support from our industry partners, it's shaped around that some way or another, so that any support we get, those industry partners do have a direct connection back to hopefully what their bottom line is in terms of creating their workforce. So if you've got any strings you can pull and you got other folks you want to deliver $1 million like Coca-Cola did, we'll make sure it's invested right back in their business. So thank you for that comment. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even, I mean, locally, Caterpillar with welding. I mean, there's so many examples of that. The public-private partnerships that are propping these things up. And
yeah, we absolutely could not what we do around the state without our local industry level partnerships. There's no question about it. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. One thing that I will keep saying though, as we have those companies that are donating and they're giving money for those programs, but we still aren't getting the students. And I do believe that we're missing one of the most important components, which is their parents. And when they're in high school and getting ready to graduate, or when they go into high school, those parents need to know about these jobs that are out there and how much they pay, because those parents know if their child is going to be capable of going to a 4-year institution or if 2 years better for them. But I think that we really have to go back into those schools, talking to those counselors, but not just those counselors. I think some of our technical schools are not recruiting heavily enough, and by talking to that parent, because in that child's mind, they're saying, well, I'm going to go to a 4-year school, I'm going to get this, but they're not really ready to do that. But that parent can convince them, because I didn't want to be an educator. My mother woke me up and said, you will go and sub during the time that there were no jobs available. And that's how I became a teacher, because I started subbing in Detroit Public Schools. I fell in love with teaching, and then I became a teacher. So that parent influence is very, very necessary in order to change the attitudes, like you're saying. That's one of your key elements.
No, I agree completely. In my house, we've kind of implemented a shadowing. We're not just doling out dollars to fumble through an education. I'm a product of that. I came to the University of Georgia. I was the one thrown in the deep end, like he mentioned, and I came here for landscape architecture. I took one class and I decided I was not going to be a landscape architect. Many years later, I ended up graduating with a landscape architecture degree. So, it's you got to know what you're kind of meant to do, kind of thing. But and certainly it starts with parents being able to share that with their children as well.
Commissioner will be around. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I appreciate
also didn't want to usurp any more of your time.
Appreciate you stepping up. You want to answer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to just piggyback on a little bit of what we've used in prior years. We've used Troops to Teachers, and that program no longer exists, but that was a federal program that allowed military personnel, when they transitioned out, to come into the school system and teach in areas where they were experts. That no longer exists, but the opportunity may still be there to go back and resuscitate a program that I think was amazing, because you already had the expertise. You already had the teachers who could come into a TCSG system and help teach, particularly now cybersecurity. We've got a lot of personnel in our military that are ripe and ready to teach our younger folks in a field that is so necessary. So I wonder if that is an opportunity to maybe have like a subcommittee where we begin to connect back with the U.S. military and reopen those lines of the TTT, which is, Troops to Teachers, and other industry that we need here in Georgia. It's just a thought.
I like it.
It seems like there's almost a common theme between Chairman Martin's comments about people that are people that have been sort of out of the workforce that maybe are ready to come back. And my family, prime example, we're empty nesters now. Very smart people. I'm kidding. but
we know.
But maybe a little rusty, enticing people back into the workforce. so subcommittee on sort of what are the product offerings? Are we incubating or creating as new ideas, or is it sort of serendipitous? Well, because of this, we need more CDLs, or is it more of a program? How are we constantly evaluating where the need is and creating those opportunities, and are we marketing to get people back out there? To Chairman Martin's point, we're in a dramatic inflationary environment. Your money, you thought you were going to retire, but now you realize you're going to probably live to be 95 years old. You're going to live a lot longer today, and you're going to need to be relevant a lot longer in a changing economy and in an inflationary environment. Money's not going to go as far, and it's going to have to go a lot longer. So getting back into the workforce, being relevant, and subcommittees and marketing, to your point earlier, of how are we going to get the word out, because we've got wonderful schools, high schools in Forsyth County, but there was always a sort of a bottleneck at the counselor level. There's just too few of them with the skills to help those kids make. And it's just everything was a big push to go off to college, and even that was too much of a bottleneck for high school with 3,000 kids in there, right? But so a lot of these great things that are available were kind of maybe not being presented to the children early enough. I'm rambling, but there is a cohesive thing here going on with what is the product offering? Are we covering all the bases? Are we identifying the things that we need to continue, like you did on the board, to continue to be relevant? AI, artificial intelligence is an obvious one, right?
Yeah,
Cyber
absolutely.
is an obvious one.
Representative Clark?
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I recently had a meeting with some constituents, and some of them have been in the education system K through 12 for a while, and they were telling me about how there used to be kind of like a track in high school. And I know we aren't the education committee, we're the higher education committee, but I think they're connected. A program is great, having the teachers is great, but you have to have students, otherwise it's just a program and a pamphlet. So is there any, this probably wouldn't be our committee, but I think part of it is maybe starting at the high school level and seeing if we can identify students that would choose a technical track if they just knew about it, and just have them go that way starting in 9th or 10th grade. Similar to my son lives in Maryland. They have Law Academy for all the kids that think they're going to become lawyers, and they have the Business Academy for all the kids. And it's in the school. They take the classes, they interact with businesses that are relevant to that track in the 9th grade, 10th grade. So by the time they're graduating, they've interacted with businesses, they know what schools they want to go to that offer what they want to do, and it would probably take a little pressure off of marketing if it's just kind of happening organically in the schools as they feed into wherever they're going to go.
Well, the nice thing about this committee is that we are here to dole out suggestions. So regardless of it being, the K through 12 leads to higher ed. So whatever suggestions we decide to come up with, we certainly are welcome to share them. Well, it is about 10:20 on the clock, and I know we've got the room till 12, but we have a committee after us, Chairman Fleming's dual enrollment committee starting at 10:30. Any other closing remarks? I will say, I will challenge you to, we will get some data to you guys on the funding and costs, so that we can be prepared for some suggestions on that at our next meeting, which is October 26th. But really just want to challenge you to really consider the suggestions that we're going to make, and encourage the growth that we're talking about, and be able to not have to put them in a position of having to prop them up every year and have this conversation over and over again. Any other closing remarks? All right. Yes.
I am very pleased with the commissioner spoke about the partnerships they have with private industry, And in thinking about this, all of this question about our workforce needs and the kids in school not understanding what the opportunities are, I just think that the private industry factor there could contribute to that by even beginning to advertise and send some students to our technical schools. You know, at the end of the day, what we were talking about is very important work. Life is a great gift from God, and a big part of success in life is enjoying what you do for a living and feeding your family and making a positive contribution to society. I'm very troubled by everyone I'm talking to now saying, we can't find anybody to work. We can't find anybody to work. And that's in every field, every area. Problem there that we have to address here, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but getting the kids to recognize their opportunities and what these excellent incomes can be and some of the skills that we're talking about is just a big challenge. And I'm, like all of you, troubled by the conversations I'm having with people saying, well, we just don't have anybody to work. And so, you know, where have all the workers gone? And what do we do to inspire them to get educated so that they can live a good, full, productive life and pay taxes and do business? And so that's what we're after. And I think that private industry portion of that may have a big piece in helping us get the students on the right path. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you for that, Representative. We will stand adjourned, and we will reconvene October 26th in Statesboro, Georgia.